Hey everyone, the V17 Pro is the newest mid-ranger from Vivo. It has pretty much every feature you might want or expect on a modern smartphone. However, are there any caveats to this, and is the user experience as a whole, well, good enough? Is this phone worth getting? I'm Angie for GSM Arena, and this is our review of the Vivo V17 Pro. From the back, the V17 Pro is quite eye-catching. Its pearl-like gradient is elegant, and the quad-camera setup is a bit unusual. There is no hump, and though the back picks up most fingerprints, they aren't too noticeable for the most part, and it won't look like a smudge fest after regular use. The phone also features Gorilla Glass 6 on the front and back, and a plastic frame, so it feels pretty solid. One of the reasons for this was due to its weight and its bulk, so perhaps that's also just an illusion. The only reason you might want to use a case are because the edges of the rear screen protector feel a little sharp. On the front, you'll find that the nearly 6.5-inch OLED screen is immersive, with thin bezels all around and no notch to speak of. In part, this is thanks to the motorized dual selfie camera setup at the top of the phone. Curiously, you'll find that this is where the earpiece is housed too. This might be one of the weakest parts of the phone, but it has fall detection, so it'll disengage and attempt to retract as soon as it detects free fall, so you should be safe even if it takes a direct hit. The AMOLED screen itself is a beautiful Full HD panel. There was a very good maximum brightness of 500 nits, and we noticed no light bleed when displaying blacks. Also, when you switch to the natural contrast, it has pretty great color accuracy. Up top, you'll find another surprise next to the cameras: a headphone jack. In our lab test, things weren't perfect with wired headphones, and were more along the lines of what you'd call decent, but unless you have amazing headphones, you're probably not going to notice a difference. Lower down, there's a fingerprint reader under the display, and it seems faster or slower depending on what unlock animation you use. There's also a face unlock option, although it's not particularly secure. On the bottom of the phone, you'll find a USB-C port, at long last for this series of phones, and the single bottom-firing speaker. It's nothing fancy, and the audio quality was average, but the loudness was excellent. As far as software goes, the V17 Pro runs FunTouch OS 9.1 on top of Android Pie. I really find this to be a super strange name for an OS, but let's ignore that. We're hoping that it will get updated to Android 10 in the future. It's a busy UI with a lot of options and a lot of pre-installed apps. You can uninstall half of them, but you're still stuck with the Vivo app and Vivo Cloud. There's no app drawer, but naturally you can always install a third-party launcher if you really miss it. You can customize it with themes or a dark mode. That'll help save some battery since the screen is an AMOLED one. You can choose between gestures or navigation buttons. Personally, I always prefer gestures because there's more screen real estate and it seems more fluid, but some of my colleagues prefer the navigation buttons. The one thing that is weird is that swiping down won't bring up the quick toggles, but will only display current notifications. Instead, if you want to adjust the brightness or change your Wi-Fi settings, you'll have to swipe up from the bottom left-hand corner. Despite the heavy UI, the Snapdragon 675 should be enough to power the phone as a daily driver. The chipset can easily handle multitasking and web browsing, but gaming won't be stellar if it's a heavier game. Thanks to the 4100 mAh battery, the V17 Pro got an excellent endurance rating of 107 hours. The phone supports 18-watt fast charging, and with a charger in the box, you can get from 0 to 40% in half an hour, which is pretty good. The V17 Pro has 4 cameras. There's a 48-megapixel main shooter, a 13-megapixel telephoto, an 8-megapixel ultra-wide, and a 2-megapixel depth sensor. 12-megapixel daylight snaps were excellent, and the shots produced were some of the better ones we've seen recently. The colors are punchy, and the skies might be a bit oversaturated for some tastes, but we thought they were quite good. There's no point in switching to the 48-megapixel mode, because you often won't get better pictures than the default 12-megapixel ones. Portraits were detailed and separation was excellent, but you should know that if you want a background blur, you should click on bokeh mode. Portrait mode on this phone means beautification. The 13-megapixel telephoto only works when there's a lot of light, and surprisingly, it saves 12-megapixel images too. The photos are pretty great, but they have more noise than the main camera. In lower light, the telecamera is deactivated, and you can get a cropped image from the main camera snapper instead. The ultrawide has a lower per pixel quality than the other two cameras, but colors, noise levels, and contrast are still superb. You can also use the ultrawide to shoot macro shots, which turned out rather average in terms of quality, but still they can be pretty fun to experiment with. The Vivo has a night mode, and it takes around a second to shoot. It helps with details in the shadows and generally balances exposure, but the difference between a night mode shot and a regular low light shot is not that mind-blowing. Still, if the environment is really dark, it helps for less blurry shots, and it makes more sense to use it. At night, the ultra-wide lens had pretty poor photos. Noise reduction was aggressive and smeared much of the fine detail, and the exposure was still dark. Although you can take 4K videos at 30 FPS with the main camera, the ultra-wide camera can only record Full HD videos and the telephoto camera can't capture videos at all. Footage was sharp and detailed in 4K, but it wasn't class-leading. Full HD videos were also very good, but due to the always-on EIS, the field of view was cropped. If you switch to the ultra-wide videos, there's plenty of detail, but the colors are off and the footage is noticeably warmer than it should be. Despite having a 32-megapixel main cam, selfies lack detail and sharpness, and we saw some noticeable artifacts. The good thing is that there is a night mode, and in really dark environments, it makes a world of difference. The ultra-wide selfies are average in detail and a bit soft, but they still allow you to fit more in the frame and have good colors and contrast. The Vivo V17 Pro seems to have it all. It has nice cameras, a good chipset, a great battery life, a good screen. Really, it seems to have the entire package. But its biggest flaw is actually its price. It's not priced competitively, and there's other phones that have higher specs for half the money. So if this phone has caught your eye, then I would only recommend getting it if you wait for the price to drop, or if you find it somewhere on sale. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button down below, subscribe, hit the bell icon, and I'll see you guys next time.